Welcome to the Sports Den. I'm JD Walker. Scott is stuck in transit tonight. Here with here with Kyle, Brandon, and Obi. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Could be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be better, but overall pretty well.
Yeah.
Nice to see your house is still intact.
Yeah, I'm luckily far enough away from the city that I didn't have too much in the way of shenanigans, but I heard fireworks in the distance for nearly the entire duration of the game, and lots of more fireworks and police sirens afterwards. So that's to be expected.
Yeah, but I thought the city handled itself the way it's supposed to in the loss, which is to shut up and go home. They had one television camera lady out there. She's like, "Well, everybody's just kind of leaving Broad Street. They're all disappointed. People were set up with fireworks and stuff, so they sent them off and they launched the confetti and they went home."
I heard one reporter. She was like, "I just read a tweet. A tweet came into me saying that Philadelphia police is playing better defense than the Eagles."
Well,
they were prepped. They were ready.
They were ready.
Better coached is what they were. They were better coached.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And there was one thing I saw about, if does the grease that they grease the poles with, is that flammable? Would they try and light poles on fire?
Or was it on the football field? I think is the better question. Did they grease the poles or did they grease the field? I think that could be
definitely looked like they greased the field last night.
Yeah. I mean, so as the resident, I know, JD, you're in Philly, but you're still holding on to your Jets love. I've given up my love for other teams in football and gone to the Eagles side. So as the representative Eagles fan, I would say that the bottom line is they were outcoached. I think at halftime, Andy Reid realized that if you go if you go east and west and you change directions, you can't be followed. And, there's 2 open touchdowns because of that. And it was the same phenomena that we saw Buffalo not deal with in the snow, the slippery field, and how it favors the offensive line. And the Eagles coaches not figuring out a way to adjust to that. I looked at the what do they call that? The drive chart. And first of all, they were making too big of a deal of time of possession since the score was so close. And one of those possessions, and with 0 seconds of time of possession, they scored 7 points. Kansas City did. So I thought that was a little overblown during the telecast and during halftime coverage. But overall, the Eagles didn't adjust to the field the way it was, the proper way. They couldn't get any pass rush. And so when you get to the final play, the bad call, they lost the game. And now, first of all, I know Bradbury took the high road. And so some people are using that to say, well, it was a good call because Bradbury said he held. When people take the high road, you don't go, well, I'm glad you took the high road, but you're wrong. That's a bad call. I think you're doing people taking the high road all over the world a disservice. So I'm not going to say it was a good call because Bradbury took the high road. It was a bad call. But the worst thing about it is this to me. I'm looking at this Super Bowl and I'm comparing it to the World Cup. We saw the best World Cup final, that there ever been. The 2 stars shot it out all game, went to everything you could want. And in this game, the officials prevented that from happening. Whether the Eagles win or lose, when the ball goes back to Hurts, how much better of a game is it for everybody involved? If the ball goes back to Hurts, I think we were all as fans, especially the number of fans who are watching the game who don't have a rooting interest, robbed of a great final drive. Instead, we saw a good kneel down play. Good. I didn't think he was going to kneel down at first. McKinnon was running around the outside, and coaches. But overall, I think the coaching on the Kansas City side outshined. I think that this was. I've always said over a regular season, Andy Reid is probably even better than Bill Belichick. Belichick always starts a little slow. Andy Reid just over a course of a full season. But in one game, Andy Reid will come in. He'll have a game plan. If it's not working, he won't change. And this time he did. First, they were able to exploit Kelsey being open. The Eagles responded to that. And then Andy Reid found another move to make to the Eagles responding to Kelsey being open. And he protected his quarterback all game. So all due respect to Kelsey, to Andy Reid, all due respect to Kansas City. And we're going to talk about Mahomes later. I do think Mahomes, you can't give Mahomes the MVP in that game when he was so outshined by Hurts. This is one of those times the offensive line deserved the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
I know I put in our text. I'm just remembering the old John Madden six-legged turkey when he's like, I would give it to Emmett, but he didn't get touched for 5 yards on every carry, so I'm giving it to the line too. This needs the six-legged turkey. That offensive line was the stars of the game, and I don't know a single one of those guys' names. Shame on me and shame on everybody else, because they were the MVPs. They won that game. The field was crap, but it's not their fault, and they managed it, and they all due respect to Kansas City and that coaching staff who found a way to win against, I think, under different circumstances, a better team. But they won that game, and that's what matters. And they're the world champs, and Eagles are looking to next year with a lot of possible retirement.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the offensive line definitely won that game for them. Because, honestly, I thought it was going to be a shootout going into the game, and it pretty much was. Like, both Hurts and Mahomes were just going off. Even hobbled Mahomes. He has a cannon for an arm, as it's been known, and it has been said before, and it was on full display. Neither defense could really handle the opposing quarterback that game. It just so happened that in the second half, the Chiefs were absolutely unstoppable. Like, there was nothing that they did wrong. They didn't do a single thing wrong, and with enough barrels of cortisone that was shot into Mahomes' leg, he was even able to run a few times too. So that it's a really tough way for the Eagles to lose that game. It's just the game was fantastic overall. It's a shame that it had to end like that.
Yeah,
that was the referees were bad all game. They couldn't figure out what the heck a catch was, and then at the end they decided to just really stick themselves in front and center, and it really, really stinks. Do I think that the Chiefs would not have scored? No, they absolutely could have scored on the next play, for God's sakes, even with or without that penalty. But for the refs to stick their heads into that one on what is absolutely a tic-tac play, it stinks. It really, really stinks. But unfortunately, is what it is. Those refs are going to have zero repercussions from that, that's what irks me the most. Because they can make those calls and then just walk around saying,
anytime officials make the game about them, and there's never any repercussions for it, and that's a problem across multiple sports.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Obi so much he ran away.
But yeah, no, it was overall it was a really good game. Shame that it had to end like that, and Mahomes basically put himself into legend status right now. So it's like, yeah, there was always a discussion, but he pretty much in an early career. He's not even halfway done with his career, and he's already up to the status that he's at. And you know what? Good on him. He worked. He certainly earned it. And Hurts, and the thing is, Hurts, he set a record that game, and he has a loss to show for it, which is a shame. But unfortunate.
Probably
it just happened to be he was. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's probably the best QB performance by a loser since Arizona and Kurt Warner.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely. No, I agree with that entirely. If not better, I think this. Yeah, I was gonna say I think this performance was actually better than Kurt Warner's. Like, like Hurts put the entire offense on his back. Every touchdown was through him, whether it be one of his multiple rushing touchdowns or a pass. Nothing else was done without him.
Run for 3 touchdowns.
Nope. That's the record. That's his record. Yeah,
Mhm.
he has that. He has the record for most touchdowns scored by a quarterback, most rushing touchdowns scored by a quarterback in a Super Bowl game.
Actually,
And
it's actually, and he tied the general rushing record that TD.
oh wow,
Yeah,
wow.
TD only. Yeah, no running back put
Jeez.
4
Yeah.
up, and no running backs going to put 4
That's
up in the modern.
that's
NFL,
incredible.
so, yeah.
But and it's a shame that happened to happen in a loss. But no, Mahomes and his offensive line earned that one for sure. That was probably one of the best offensive line performances I've seen. And I will definitely say that I was mistaken. I was mistaken in my earlier prediction in that the Eagles defense would be able to tackle Mahomes with the hobbled leg. They got one on him, but that was because he ran and he was hurt. But that long halftime definitely benefited him, and he came back in the second half and basically carried his team to a win. And yeah, congratulations to the Chiefs. It's a shame that the game ended that way, and honestly, it could have been either way. Winning by literally a field goal in the last second, that's a Super Bowl ending for you. Whether it be a play, it went down to the last play. So, yep, good on them. It's a shame it ended, but congratulations to the Chiefs.
Well, apparently I sit here being a little bit of a contrarian to some of these points. To the Chiefs' offensive line point, while I thought they had a tremendous game and protected Mahomes to the best that they probably have all season, I can't sit here and say that they have to be MVP. Because if we get to a point where we start giving offensive line MVPs, then we really open a Pandora's box where it's like, well, of course, then every offensive line in every Super Bowl winner should be MVP because they protected the quarterback enough for them to win the game. I just think that that's not. I understand the point, but I just don't think you can actually sit there and do that. But they were by far, inarguably, the best overall unit by both teams on the field last night. I absolutely say that. But what Mahomes did, and we'll get to Mahomes specifically a little bit later, but I just thought you couldn't give MVP to anyone other than Mahomes. And you said the Jalen Hurts point where the only NBA Finals winner in a loss, Jerry West, many years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't see the NFL ever doing that. I just don't think that.
I think it happened once in the 70s, and that's it.
Has it? Okay. Well, in today's, it's hard to really do that because
I don't think it'll ever happen again.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But going into that game, if you had told me that the Eagles weren't going to have a single sack, I would think you're crazy. I mean, like one sack. I know Mahomes is the ultimate escape artist, but I mean, with that front 7 and front 4 specifically, one sack, I would have thought that was crazy. And they got some pressure, some pushbacks on Mahomes, but he was able to fly around there and do Mahomesian things. It was an absolute tremendous performance. That second half missed one throw, Mahomes, and it was on a throwaway. So it really wasn't even a legitimate pass attempt. But for the Eagles, I think the thing you have to take away from this is the quarterback play. Because a lot of other things in that game can be fixed, like a lot of the disciplinary things, a lot of the coaching things. But for that quarterback with his history to come into that game and step up the way he did, I think is a tremendous vote of confidence for the Philly franchise and for Philly fans moving forward. So I don't want there to be a total negativity from for that sense, because Jalen played one of the great games that we've seen a quarterback play in the Super Bowl. And look, I mean, the Chiefs were able to overcome obviously the possible Mahomes injury, and the way he ran off the field, for I say when he was grimacing on the sideline, they cut away and you could barely see it, but he was grimacing and just laid his head on the trainer's shoulder, like all the air was taken out of him. And then a couple of minutes later, they're jogging in for halftime, and he looked pretty good. It didn't look like he was. I mean, there was some limp and there was some gingerly movement to it, but from what we just saw to that, I thought that was a great sign. We know that the halftime of the Super Bowl is extended, so he's going to get that little bit even more of extra time to wrap up that ankle, rest up a little bit. And I thought it really helped him, because I don't know. And we'll get to the Mahomes point, but you had to play even with the Eagles issues and other issues that weren't on the part of the actual game, like the field and some of the officiating, which we'll get to. You had to be more than perfect, and he was, which is why I say you can't give MVP to anyone other than Mahomes.
Yeah, Obi.
I'm really going to get into that leg thing in a little bit, but I love Ryan Clark because I know the guy who just spoke is our NBA guy. Ryan Clark says today on TV that he's not sure that Mahomes didn't pull a Paul Pierce with that injury. So we'll get more into the leg thing anyway. Yeah. But I want to take a moment to sort of follow up with my comment on the MVP going to the offensive line. I think the dumbest award in all of sports is the Super Bowl MVP. To give an MVP over a full football season to a single guy on the team, that's rough enough as it is. But okay, you've had 17 games to look at it. Sometimes a guy deserves the MVP in the Super Bowl. And I think if the Eagles won, Hurts deserved it. Other times you look at the game, you're like, that team won. And I'm going to go further and say that is the shocking thing about the Super Bowl this year is I thought that it would take Mahomes to be the most somehow find 350 yards in passing. Pacheco wasn't going to get anywhere on the ground. It was going to have to be dumped. Like Kelsey was going to have to do something otherworldly. Like they won without doing otherworldly stats. The defense held them, forced 2 punts and 2 field goals. Like there was a team effort there that all those drives weren't touchdowns. It's harder for me to look at that Kansas City team and say that guy won the game for Kansas City. We've been laying off the officials, but what's a catch? What isn't a catch? The dude out of Rutgers.
We'll get to them in a minute.
Yeah.
The dude out of Rutgers should have been the MVP because he should have had 2 touchdowns. Not. It was just. Sometimes it's hard for me in a single game in the football to really pick an MVP, and that is why you can't pick a single lineman unless you really watch the game and really watch the stats, and you have to go back and watch the all 22.
Most drivers that vote on the award don't even
know their name. Right, and I don't know their names. This isn't like Mark Stepnowski and Allen and even the Eagles offensive line, where at least you could be like, well, maybe you can name Kelsey and Johnson. Like you can name those guys. So it's not so much, I'd like to say to Brandon, it's not so much I think the line should have gotten the MVP, as in sometimes you just got to look at a football game and go, there was no most valuable player. That team won the game.
Especially since so many times it's the Super Bowl MVP award. And I agree with you, Obi, that it is one of the possibly the most, it's the most overrated award in football for sure. Especially since a lot of times it's just like, just give it to the winning quarterback. But then was Joe Flacco is the first one I think of. Like he didn't really win that game for the Ravens. How many Super Bowl MVPs did Brady win just because he was the winning quarterback and he didn't have a fantastic game? Vinatieri should have been MVP for half of those, but that's a whole other story. Like that just a lot of times we don't know who to give it to, so just give it to the winning quarterback.
Yeah, Carroll deserves for the Patriots on that game too.
But then that's what I'm saying. Then we really get into these like Pandora box conversations of, oh well, now then really this guy or this coach or this unit should have gotten it. I just think we it's either you pick the individual player that really you think had the best game out of both teams, or there's nothing at all. I don't think there's anything in between.
And I'm fine with scrapping that award. Like, it should be like you have to win it with like a 90% vote, then you're the MVP. But if somebody else can vote for somebody, that's my argument, Brandon. I agree with you that when you vote, you have to vote, and you can't vote for a unit. And there was a tie once where 2 defensive players won it, I think. But so we are getting
that was I think the one losing MVP I think was it was Super Bowl 5 I guess, where the Colts won an ugly game by a field goal at the end, and 2 Cowboys defensive players split the MVP for the losing team.
I think you're right. It was a Colts Cowboy game, and it was 2 Cowboys. So
it took it, and like the game itself was completely forgettable. Like just before any of our time, obviously, but just I'm a big history buff, so I read about that. And we're just, the game itself was absolute garbage. So it was one of those things like just they were the only performances that stood out aside from the kicker who had the game-winning field goal. That's once in 57 years that's happened. That shows how crazy and rare a performance that is, and we'll probably won't see that again as far as MVP from a losing team. Heck, even having any defensive player being an MVP, that happens once every 10 years, maybe.
Miller was it last time?
And it's almost always a known defensive player like an Urlacher or Ray Lewis, or basically like a superstar level defensive player,
or somebody who comes out of nowhere and does something crazy
on defense,
like Larry Brown in Super Bowl 30. Didn't he have like 3 interceptions, returning 2 of them for touchdowns?
All right, well, what about a situation where Edelman wins as a wide receiver?
Right, like that should happen more often.
The Larry Allen Super Bowl MVP, to me, is another one of those MVPs where the team won it. Why did Larry Allen get 2 interceptions? Because the defensive line was the defensive line was all over Neil O'Donnell, and he had one rule: don't throw it to Sanders' side of the field. So he hits the ball to the other side of the field.
So then Sanders is the real MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but he wouldn't have been heaving the ball without Russell Maryland and Leon Lott. I mean, that's where this whole
Oh yeah. So, the other thing in regards to like the offensive line, we don't really know who they are, but it's like the offensive line is like the only it's like the only set of positions that isn't really known, that isn't looked at for big plays. Like, you can have like individual big plays on the defense. You can have an individual big play for a wide receiver, running back, tight end. It's set every other position, but the offensive line,
their role doesn't allow for it.
Exactly.
Unless it was some type of fumble recovery where they pick it up and take it all the way down.
Or
the percentage of that is
0
something, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like when when a play happens, that is a team effort of that set of positions. It's always a team effort.
Yeah, and it's with offensive linemen, they're like officials where you only know their names if they screw up. Like if they get like a bunch of holding penalties or have some kind of blown coverage or something. That's usually the only time you learn offensive linemen's names.
Hey, let's finally get to the zebras while we're on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, to address the controversial penalty at the end, it was a penalty, but we used the situation and the timing of it to try and undercut the legitimacy of the call. But it was a good call. The only thing it was an uncatchable pass. There was no way he was going to be able to recover it to catch it. That's the only thing about it. But to go between the deciding whether what was still, we don't know what a catch is after 3 years of the NFL or 4 year, whatever it is now. And then these defensive penalties and stuff like that. It's just I don't understand. And we hear Roger Goodell the other day coming out and saying, the refereeing is
best as ever been.
how you dare, and don't say anything. Just don't say anything. Like, you damn well know that's not the truth. And for about it, and again, it didn't. It was one of those situations where I don't think the officiating took game, but it was still there, and it was still blatantly noticeable to the point where we're talking about it, and we're not even talking about the field conditions. So I want to bring this point to say that I think the NFL, and they're not going to, but they should be absolutely embarrassed and ashamed of last night's game. Now, I understand the theatrics of the game itself and how that played out, but the logistical things of this game were completely unacceptable, and that's an understatement. For a domed field in which you have countless time to prepare for, the fact that this is even an issue is again unacceptable, and that's an understatement. But of course, they'll hide behind Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, the battle, the high scoring game. They'll hide behind that, and but I really I can't sit there and say that the NFL should be happy with that game, because they really shouldn't be. But we know they're delusional, and they won't be. And you're good. First off, I don't want to say this also. Mm-hmm. Roger Goodell needs to stop being at these podiums. He needs to stop with these public, either speeches or just being out. He's terrible. He's awkward. He's cringeworthy, and he's just really unlikable. And for you making
must never have
$50
seen
million
Gary
a year, just really, it's really the cherry on top of it all. But again, overall, it was an exciting and it was a good game, great game. But there are things that happened in this game that really shouldn't have.
The officiating was inconsistent for the whole game. But as you said, 100 years of the NFL's existence, and we still can't figure out what a frickin' catch is. And the rules, and so it was uneven throughout the course of the game. The one before halftime that was waved off, I don't think there was inconclusive evidence to overturn that. And also, his knee was down out of bounds before the bobble. So if the knee goes down, isn't that the end of the play? I wasn't really following that, and there definitely was not conclusive evidence to overturn the call. So be that as it may, and this was a crew that even going in, it was, some people, the people who follow these things, thought, yeah, this is an issue, because it was actually the same head referee from the Tampa Kansas City Super Bowl a few years ago that was an officiating mess. Yet they give it back to the same head referee. Why? The NFL has big problems in the sense that there are not enough quality officials to do the Super Bowl every year. I understand you can't give it to the same crew every year, but and they need to rotate it. But there was one guy on this crew where he's about to retire, so they just gave it to him as a retirement present, essentially. It was his second Super Bowl, with the first one being back in the 90s. Really, that we're giving out a back judge assignment in the biggest game of the year as a gold watch? That's pathetic.
These games matter.
Right.
What are we doing?
And that field in Arizona has been an issue all year. The Chiefs had issues on that field earlier this season when Harrison Butker got hurt. We're just whatever. I read something that there's some kind of new hybrid grass or something that they were trying out. Because in Arizona, what they do is the field kind of rolls out into the parking lot. And they just replace the trays and grow it, and then it rolls back into the stadium.
Yeah, it's like a sod replacement.
Right. So field conditions, and you add to that this whatever type of grass that has been an issue all year, and then you screen print giant logos across it a few days before, with that makes the paint even more slippery. I understand you need to put, have, your big billboards and all on TV, but like, do they really need to cover half the field?
So, first of all, they don't need to cover the field. Watch an NBA basketball game. I don't know how they go down on the hardcore and keep changing the ads on the game. Oh, wait, the television does it. Could have done that just as easily. I know that you won't get the fans to see those things, but so what?
Shit.
They're in the stadium and seeing it everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. There's so many other places to put in the stadium for the fans who are there. So you can get rid of all that painting on the field. The field was atrocious for both teams. This game could have been 45-47 if there wasn't some slippage going on. And we're lucky that we didn't get an injury like last year, where a non, just a slip and a great player's out of the game. So that was embarrassing, the NFL. The fact that we don't know what a catch is, because honestly, right? I've been listening to so many people today. I wish I could give everyone who I've heard today the right credit, because I've been all over the place listening and talking football. The catch that isn't a fumble or the incomplete, if he is the same catch that's called a completion because it's in the middle of the field, when the other one is not a completion because he was going out of bounds. Like, wait, what? No, it's like 2 feet or not. It's the same. It was the same thing, but he went out of bounds, so it's a different thing. So we don't know what a catch is. Yeah, and just I'm going to give it to you. And then the penalty, was it a penalty by the rule book? Yes, it was. But it was less of a penalty than the pass interference that they didn't call. That the receiver
on the 3rd and 8.
On the 3rd and 8, that the receiver was like, "Yo, what's going?" Here, the receiver was like, "No," and here's why: they were allowed to play a certain way for 56 minutes of a football game. At that point, the players on both sides know what's happening, how the game's being officiated. So now maybe that is a penalty but you've changed it. And like I said, just because Bradbury goes and takes the high road at the end of the game and Sirianni takes the high road, they're right, because they would have had to get in the ball. First of all, Kansas City would have had to do the chicken butt thing and kick the field goal and not gone for it on 4th down and getting a touchdown. And then they would have had to get the ball back, drive the field, get a score without leaving 13 seconds on the clock, because we know what Mahomes could do in 13 seconds. So there was a lot of football game left. The people who were robbed are us, because we would have seen that football game. And so, like I said earlier, you watch that World Cup game, you saw 2 superstars go at it, and I don't remember hearing anything about officials or anything about the field.
Right.
Because they swallowed the whistle.
Because that's right, because that's what you're doing. This is it. This is the end. And the other thing about that penalty is, while a Kansas City fan may have gone back to that 3rd and 8 play, they were not going to go back to the holding there. And people are like, Mahomes pointed it out. I think Mahomes was pointing at the flag. Like, the flag came out. Mahomes was like, there's a flag. Not there was holding. There's a flag. We're okay, guys. Because Juju did not react. Juju just walked back like, okay, that's how we're playing the game. Yeah. It killed it for the fans more than the Eagles.
The inconsistency was awful.
The inconsistency was bad. It was uneven and inconsistent for the whole game. Having a championship decided by an official's call is a disservice to both teams and to the fans watching. It's because some might say that the Chiefs championship is tainted because of that, or something like that. It isn't. They probably would have scored the next play anyway. But
the game, because the game is so close.
Right. And it should have gone to its logical conclusion and been decided on the field. Was it by the rule book a, correct penalty? Yes. But the timing and taking it out of the player's hands is a travesty whenever that happens. I mean, I'm a Seton Hall fan. Look up the 1989 NCAA championship game on YouTube, where it was actually decided in a similar situation, where a bogus referee call at a pivotal juncture with the last few seconds of overtime decided the championship.
2000. It's funny you mentioned basketball. 2004, Villanova versus UNC, and I think the Elite. It was either the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. A ghost travel call.
Yeah,
decided the game.
And there's lots that we can. NCAA
go on
tournament
for
games,
hours.
go on a
Oh
bunch
my God, yeah.
Yes.
We could devote an entire show to that one.
Right.
But I believe
just
my
How about
the term
high level game.
the term I like to
especially-
use is from wrestling. One of my favorite lines. It's a miscarriage of justice.
Right. And there's all kinds of yokels on the internet that say things like the NFL's fixed, like WWE, blah blah blah. Which is bogus, but junk like this gives some credibility to the wackos that say things like that. Or Vegas wants games to go a certain way, so blah blah blah. It's stupid, all of it. But you see things like this, and that's where people get garbage like that from, and it's an embarrassment for the NFL, for even the appearance of impropriety. I don't think it's impropriety. I think it's plain incompetence. I forget the name for the rule of don't write off to don't attribute something to to a conspiracy when it can be written off by plain incompetence. I believe that absolutely applies here with the officiating in this game and in the NFL in general. But just to have your signature sport and its main event end like this, it is a travesty, and it's a disservice to the players. And if an integral part of your media broadcasts of your game is having a retired ref explaining the rules, your rules are too damn complicated. Especially for fans to understand it in a game where everybody's watching it. Half of the people watching it don't care about football and are just there for the halftime show and the commercials. To have, read the room better. And the NFL has been terrible at that for a long time.
They're blind.
So,
yes.
One of the things you said here, which I think is very important, I'm going to use this as a segue, sorry, is that this could taint this win for people. And, this is a legacy game for the coach and the quarterback of the team that ended up winning. And, when people start getting nitpicky, if he gets a few more and gets around a few more times, they'll be like, well, Brady had the tuck game. Well, Mahomes had the P. So that's going to be there. But first, I'd like to talk about me for just a minute because I'm more important than Mahomes. I'm like almost a 50-year-old man. I do play a combat sport, and I've gone in with injuries sometimes. And sometimes I get hit where my injury is, and it hurts way more than the injury itself ever did. And it disables me for 5 minutes. And I'm almost 50. And I think that's what happened with Mahomes. I don't think the leg story is that big of a deal. By the way, the guy who threw for 300 yards had a bad shoulder. So the leg thing, I don't think is a big deal. But, and you can ignore everything before the but, let's get into what he did. First of all, he did something Tom Brady has never done. And that's win a Super Bowl when the opponent scored 30 points. Like, Tom Brady didn't win shootouts. Those are the ones he lost when it came down to, can the quarterback do it? No, they went up 28-3, and the defense shut the other team down so he could come back. Mahomes was as much as I'm like, let's give the MVP to somebody else, he's also this team right now. I think we had a conversation. I know we had a conversation. 12% was the highest percent of the salary cap a quarterback ever had before winning the Super Bowl. 18% cap hit Mahomes had. Best receiver took a hike. I'm right now, I'm more impressed with Mahomes right now than I am angry that my Eagles lost, because I think he is putting something together, and I hope he continues. I don't know how many more Super Bowls he needs to get to and or win before he can really be in that conversation with Brady. But right now, Brady has that Jordan winning thing. But let's be honest. Jordan passed Russell with 3 less championships. That's 33%. That's a chunk less. So if Mahomes can do some more things on the court, on the field, I mean, I think he's set up because I think he's a better quarterback, and he's doing it without that defense that Brady had most seasons, like 18% versus 12. That's 2 players of decent quality that Mahomes can't have. Specifically, Tyreek Hill. Now, granted, Kelsey is a beast.
It's a safety net.
And he's getting all that money, that $300 million extension or whatever, and it already looks like a bargain.
Right. Now, I mean, again, they also got MVS who did that role, but Brady's big. And the other thing I'm wondering though is because of costs, is it more important to have a great tight end because you can sign him for less than a great wide receiver right now? And will that change? Because that is what they have in common, right? Like Kelsey, there's talk that he's better than Gronk. I don't know if he's there yet, but there's talk, and he's got some stat. He's comparable, right? It's a conversation.
Everything's a conversation.
Exactly, it's a conversation now.
Mm-hmm. And so, is that the new NFL? I mean, Hurts has Goddard, who caught everything that was thrown at him. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, because right now the NFL is trying to get these receivers because they're great, and the good quarterbacks need a great receiver. But is the cost move to get a great tight end who can perform year in and year out? Like maybe with Andrews, Baltimore's actually on to something. You don't need wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all folds out. The big winners, I think, were for the Super Bowl who didn't play were Lamar Jackson and Josh Daniels, because you can now officially say you can win with 18%. So pay me my money, even though you're not Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow really won because
Burrow is going to get paid.
Because Burrow is going to get paid because he's shown that he's gotten there and he looks great and you can win it. So lots of people won who aren't named Patrick Mahomes, but if Patrick Mahomes keeps getting out of that AFC for another 2 or 3 years with Burrow and Allen and Lawrence, not to mention Parker Rodgers going over there and Herbert, like, dude, this guy is a joy to watch. Wish it wasn't my Eagles he beat, but a absolute joy to watch.
Well, it's like you mentioned all the big names. This is going to up the salaries for all the mid-level ones too, like Daniel Jones. He's going to get a gigantic. This game, Mahomes' performance just increased his payday. So for the exact reasons that you mentioned. So and
this was his only sock game.
Mm-hmm. Plus, none of you, with all these different quarterbacks you just mentioned, payday for Jalen Hurts is coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he literally played in the game last night. He's coming.
Which scares the bejesus out of me, right? Like, I will be honest, because I want to keep A.J. Brown and Smith and Goddard. And I know that defense is, by the way, 2 guys are nearing retirement, and the offensive line is 2 guys who are nearing retirement. So I am scared that they're going to put all this money into Hurts, who earned it, and not be able to backfill those other positions that they're going to need to backfill. I am scared. I mean, straight up as an Eagle fan, that this thing ain't going to go for a long time because of salary cap implications, because of how well Hurts played, and he deserved it. We're going to look like the Cowboys soon. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, we're not going to put a bunch of money into a useless running back, but boy, that is a scary thing.
Well, on the bright side, the Eagles do not have a potential superstar running back, so you don't need to worry about that. So, but like with most running quarterbacks, how long will his legs last? That's the thing with Hurts. So while Mahomes, he was very mobile for a while, but he had the arm. He has an absolute cannon for an arm. Hurts doesn't have that absolute cannon for an arm. So going into it, he's still going to get a big contract, but that big contract will probably, no pun intended, hurt whichever team in the longer run than, say, throwing $1 bajillion at Patrick Mahomes, because kind of like with Brett Favre. Guy has a cannon for an arm. He's still going to be able to throw it a mile, even at the older, and he's smart enough of a playmaker that he knows when to dump it out to a tight end, when to dump it out to the guy running for the short gain, for the 10-yard gain instead of the 50-yard gain. But going back to the earlier point about the tight ends, a tight end is a very underrated position, mainly because it is a multi-purpose position. So you get teams that bring in your like a tight end that can average, that's an average catcher, but who can but 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 who can also defend, who can also catch. So tight ends are the safety nets. All those really good quarterbacks, like Tom Brady, he had that safety net tight end that that if he was ever feeling under pressure, could just dump it right off to, and maybe get like 2-3 yards out of it. And those 2-3 yards make that next play that much easier. So yeah, and even then, he might just be able to double up, get a first down out of it. How about that? Because that's what the tight end does. It's a short, usually a short gain type receiver, and having Kelsey there for Mahomes makes a world of difference. Without Kelsey, while Mahomes will still put up the numbers, it won't be astronomical. So
yeah. I agree with all those points. I think the tight end is one of my favorite positions on the football field. But to really address our topic here, Mahomes, the new GOAT, whether it doesn't matter how you spell it, whatever the acronym you want to use. I'd like to make a couple points here about Patrick before I step out for the show. Yeah, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, then we'll lambast you when you're gone.
Getting a little dramatic here. I want to speak directly to Patrick here. Thy dearest Patrick, 'twas a fortnight since the eureka moment in which thy mind reached a haunting decision. I blindly sided with thy eagles hailing from civilization known forth as Philadelphia. But I sit here today a humbled man, for what you displayed last Earth's rotations was nothing but pure magic. Had my eyes deceived me? No. A champion. My champion. I declare henceforward I never, ever doubt you past my last dying breath, your most humbled admirer. And I say that to say all this. Thank you. That was stupid. I worked on that all day. But I say that to say this. Tom is the top of Mount Everest. But I sit here confidently saying that Mahomes is inarguably today a top 4 quarterback all time. However, I would argue that he's 3, maybe even 2. But I would go as far to say that I still think I would take him over anybody, because he has proven over especially since he's been a starter, he has been the most creative and greatest a playmaker this league has ever seen, and at this rate, I don't see where this stops and where the accolade stops, because he really is on a trajectory none like any other, and it's beautiful to watch, and like I said, I'm never doubting him once ever again. Don't care what the situation is.
So. Yeah. I felt that way when they lost to Tampa Bay, and then he put down some of mine. But I will say this: he is now officially beyond anyone who didn't win the Super Bowl. That means Marino, right? He's officially past Marino. You need 2 to be able to pass Marino. That's how good Dan Marino was. But Elway did get 2. Made it 5 times, and the first 3 he had no team. There is no passing game as we know it without Joe Montana. We have Voldemort. And right now, I still have Manning right there. I mean, Manning did it again. Another guy, most of his Super Bowl appearances were by himself. That being said, the trajectory, I 100% agree. I think the possibility, like I said, he does not have to win 7 to pass Brady, because he's going to do it. He's going to have I think if he doesn't get tired and quit or get hurt and quit, he's going to have all of the career counting totals. I believe he's going to pass Brady, and he's going to do it in a way that Brady didn't, where he's going to be above everybody else in his own era. But Brady's like right there with
Breeze and Manning.
And Manning. So he's going to do that, which is going to be impressive. I think he's going to get a few more Super Bowls, which is going to then get by Brady and bring him past the other guys. And I mean, I think at 7, if he makes the next 2 AFC championship games at home, Like that's everybody. Like that is better. Like we get so tied up on winning championships, but like your goat that in your other piece we're waiting to see, like getting there is just as important as winning. Like
well, obviously not in the other sport, but that's fine.
But it's a coin flip when you like the game. Game against that they lost last year against Cincinnati was a coin. Like you're losing coin flips. You can't say someone's the GOAT because they got lucky. Because honestly, a lot of these Super Bowls are a bad call, a freak fumble. These things kind of mount up. So you got to look at some of just the numbers. And now he has a Super Bowl where he didn't play garbage. I think that I agree that we're all rooting for him because we still love him because he's still the new fresh thing, and we are going. And Voldemort is recent enough in our memories to not like him. But if Mahomes doesn't really catch him, it's going to take a long time for people to remember how much they hated Voldemort for the next guy to do it. So I'm really rooting for Mahomes, and like you said, it's hard to doubt him. You'll doubt him if the other team has a great defense. You're never going to doubt him in a shootout, though, right? That's the thing. Like Buffalo, they better get that Von Miller back, and they better get some defense. Cincinnati better get some defense and get an offensive line because if I think it's a quarterback battle, there's no question who I'm taking right now.
Another number.
I was going to say I had to get that Mahomes in before I let you guys continue with the rest of the show. But I'll be back on next week like always, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Be
Thank
good.
you, Brandon.
But yeah, it's like what you mentioned in regards to Mahomes and him trying to pass each people or each person above him on the supposedly like the GOAT list or whatever. He's on a good track. He's definitely accomplished enough to even have this conversation legitimately. So it's like, you might say, oh, Josh Allen's doing great. What has he done? Yeah, he's a great quarterback, but what has he done in terms of accolades? Nothing. What has really like most other quarterbacks done? What has Burrow done?
Allen is now what Peyton Manning was, in the early part of his career, where he just put a bunch of gaudy stats up, but hasn't actually won, anything.
Yes. Mahomes is definitely on that track right now. So it's like I think the next tier that he's going to be, he's past Marino. So I think like the next, how many does Roethlisberger have?
Roethlisberger has 2, which gets to my point that I saw a bunch before the game yesterday. That now is official that Mahomes is now the 5th youngest quarterback of all time to win 2 Super Bowls. The 4 that did it quicker are Roethlisberger, Brady, Bradshaw, and Aikman. That's some elite company.
Okay.
That Mahomes is already with.
Absolutely.
Like any quarterback can win 1 Super Bowl. You even had schmucks like
Nick Foles.
And Trent Dilfer
won that Super Bowl.
He did. Absolutely.
Yeah, but anyone can play great one game, right? I mean, you're in the NFL. You can play great one game.
That is a quarterback that deserved the Super Bowl MVP.
Absolutely.
Throw for over 400 yards like that.
But
considering that, anybody, but we've had people like, Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, and Joe Flacco win Super Bowls, but it's when you win 2 is when you reach a new level of immortality and usually the Hall of Fame. I believe the only quarterback who's won 2 Super Bowls, that is eligible for the Hall of Fame, has been retired long enough that they're eligible for the Hall of Fame, that isn't in the Hall of Fame is Jim Plunkett.
Yes.
That's won 2 Super Bowls. And that's only because the first 10 years of his career were complete garbage.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So 2 Super Bowls is what brings you to a new level of immortality. Especially when it's extra bonus when you do it all with the same coach. Because I don't think there's any coach that's won 2 Super Bowls that isn't in the Hall of Fame aside from maybe Coughlin.
I
You know,
don't.
who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's a different question.
I don't know if Coughlin's out. I heard it on today when Andy Reid. They said the name of one guy. They said 2 gets you in the Hall of Fame. And they said there was one guy who took a while. So I think Coughlin may not be eligible yet because he's still working.
I thought as a coach you were eligible as soon as you retired, but I don't know what the what the criteria.
Yeah,
is,
let's not go down that. I can't even check it.
But but as far as the quarterbacks, Mahomes has reached that level, and he still has a long way to go, barring injury or some other crazy thing happening. And Andy Reid doesn't look like somebody who's ready to retire. Why would you retire if you have this?
Well, I know he can't collect Social Security yet. I mean, he's old, but he ain't that old.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, Andy Reid's been around for a while, but he's not. I don't even think he's the old. Is he the oldest coach? I don't think so.
No, he isn't. I think he's only he's only 64, I believe.
Exactly.
64. I think that Andy Reid has a lot to prove too, because I think that Andy Reid is the second best coach of his generation, and he wants to be the best coach of his generation. So, he needs a few more.
He's got to outlast Belichick.
He's got to outlast Belichick and win a few more, because he's that good. I mean, Andy Reid is that. He's got 4 Super Bowls.
4 Super Bowls, 1, 2
division championship games. 4 Super Bowls, 1, 2, and 10 division championship games. And 2 times we made 4 times in a row. I don't even think that Brady and they've made it. I think. Belichick made it 4 times in a row, 2 times. He's there. I mean, he's got a lot. And like I said at the beginning of the show, give me a full season. I love Andy Reid. Give me 1 game, I get nervous. But this time he turned it around on that 1 game. He's like, oh, we got to change this and this, and he did it.
I was looking this up earlier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where Andy Reid already is 5th all time. He's quietly moved up the rankings. He's already 5th all time in coaching wins.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, good for him.
It's only 5th.
247 regular season wins, and I think it was 21 playoff wins, which that in itself is 2nd all time, behind only Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
So 247. So with the playoffs, 268 wins. That he's about 50 behind Belichick in the regular season.
Okay.
So
that's about.
So he's already it's
like 3 seasons, 4 seasons
because of how everybody's been talking about Belichick's greatness. It's and also for years was the coach who couldn't win the big one. Now he's won 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
both with the Chiefs, I think, right?
Yes, both with the Chiefs.
He went to 1 with the Eagles. But
and then he lost to the Patriots.
Yeah, that was the Terrell Owens McNabb game.
Yes.
The game that McNabb may or may not have been hungover or whatever,
or too nervous or whatever. That was something. That was the talk about a guy on 1 wheel game. That was the TO came back in 4 weeks on a broken femur. That's you take TO and you take LB not LBJ.
McNabb.
No. The wide receiver who got hurt in the Super Bowl last year. Those are 2 loudmouth guys who should have been Super Bowl MVPs.
OBJ.
OBJ and T.O. 2 divas who that was a guy who should have won an MVP in a losing Super Bowl was T.O. in that game. He was phenomenal. And
yes,
if he doesn't get hurt, he probably catches 1 more pass that Kupp doesn't catch. The game probably turns out the same. And there was an opportunity there. But that's, again, now that Brandon's got it, I think he actually agreed with us that you just get rid of the award because it's not something that needs to be given. But
absolutely.
Mahomes was spectacular and certainly.
Yeah, he definitely was. He earned it. Yeah, he absolutely earned it. He and Jalen Hurts, both were deserving. They both played the hell out of that game.
Yes.
Yeah.
They played their butts off.
And also for me, I was kind of amused by the way that the broadcasters were talking, like, oh, he might be, if he's really hurt, we might see Chad Henne. Like, there is no planet in which Chad Henne is playing in that game.
Yes and no. It depends. the only way that Chad Henne would have been in that game is if it wasn't the halftime show coming up, because they probably would have popped Henne in maybe for a drive right before that
Like
half
they did in the
if they
Jacksonville
were
game
back
when,
on the
Mahomes initiated.
field, because no, he was hurting.
Yeah.
Mahomes was hurting, but the Eagles were on the field for that long. They were still on the field, so it gave him more time to recover. So they didn't have the situation to force Mahomes back in the game.
So yeah, if that had been on a second down play,
Yes.
maybe but
Yes.
even then, I don't think so. I think Mahomes is going.
No, they would
have done a run play and then
half
gone
started
off the
that we
field.
might see Henne. Just that. No way.
I did not think Henne. To me, that is my thing. I think the one, as amazing as he is, like I said, that's why I said that first, because I want you can ignore everything before the but. Like Clark said, like RC said today, yeah, little Paul Piercy. Like I think he got hurt. I think an injured part of his body got smacked.
Yes.
And then
absolutely
that happened.
Yeah, that was legit.
All the nerves went off.
But he didn't. But
they gave him some good stuff at halftime, I'm sure.
Even if they didn't, though. Even if they didn't, because I think that kind of thing is, you get hurt, you're like, because that was hurt, not re-injured, not increasing the injury, not a bone breaking. It was just like, ow.
But they're also being cautious because it's like, yes, thank goodness for him, it was just a bump. It wasn't a re-break or anything worse than that. So that's why they were absolutely being cautious. And that's why I was saying that I think Henne, if the Chiefs were still going to be on that field for more than that like half a play, I think we would have seen him in for maybe a series, and that's it.
Maybe.
Yeah, and
while they do the checks to make sure that nothing is broken.
Henne was so ready to play that he retired, that he cracked a beer and retired before he even left the field.
Yeah. I saw that picture on, and it's just like he's just standing there in the end zone, like, cool, I'm done.
Well, I will also say that in the game where Mahomes got injured originally, like that game, he was on one wheel. You could see that he couldn't do anything, but against Cincinnati, he didn't run as much. Like, did he play a more pocket-focused game than we think of him as playing? Yes, he did. But I'm going to downplay the one-wheel thing. And I even when I called the game, when I made my prediction, I said I don't believe he's really hurt anymore.
One wheel or not, the problem was the fact that, especially on that last drive, even before questionable penalties or whatever, where was the Eagles defense where the middle of the field was that open?
Yes.
That he was able to reel off a 25-yard run to get into field goal range.
And the thing is, the defenders
or not, that's on the Eagles defense.
The defenders couldn't catch him either. It's like he ran past him, and the line was like, turn around, like, oh crap, and he still ran faster than them, which is running faster than running faster. Well, you need to have at least that one lineman who can catch a quarterback.
Hassan Reddick was chasing him and was not catching him. I think that's important. So maybe we'll find out that Reddick got hurt in practice and that was the whole thing. But Hassan, they didn't get any pressure on him like that. That is the key to the game, right? I mean,
on that one, on that specific play, yes, but also throughout the game. Well, it goes to what we were saying before. That offensive line did a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal job protecting their quarterback. But the thing is, the Eagles came close to sacking him a couple times. Like, he took some hits, but the thing is, but the thing is, but the thing is, he still was. He never. Well, when he went down, he always let go of the ball first. They were never able to bring him down with the ball in his hands. So he had. That's the usefulness of, say, like Travis Kelce or of Kelsey and his other receivers. He knew that there was someone there that he could just dump it off to at the last second. That prevented all the sacks. Yeah, he dumped it off the sidelines a couple times, but most of the time he had that nice little short game, little lob pass that no one was guarding. He made so many short emergency passes that game that it was insane. and that kept his drives going. That's why he was able to create those. That's why he was able to create those drives in the fourth quarter. He never gave up a sack, and he always had someone to dump it off to.
Without a doubt, it was all. I mean, that's where the coaching came in. They said,
Yes.
quick jump off is going to be available to you. If not, you have people deep. The man in motion, cutting out, making defenders fall on 2 touchdowns in a row. That was brilliant coaching. Untouched because they went in motion, and as soon as they went back the other way, defender slipped enough to be off. And that's all Andy Reid's doing, and he put it on Bieniemy. So, he's saying, please, somebody come get this guy. I'll keep using him, and I'll keep winning. I'm not firing him. But so
it's working.
It's working. It's almost working as well as college basketball is.
Yeah.
And I know JD is ready to run with some SHU.
Yeah, it's been oh, come on, Kyle, don't run away. Don't run away yet. We played Villanova Saturday twice, and Villanova won twice. Both the women and them. There we go. All right. So rough week for the Hall for both the men's and the women's side. They lost to Creighton twice and Villanova twice. But this was not a vintage Villanova team, on the men's side or the women's side for that matter. The Villanova women's team is ranked 15th in the country. Congratulations to Maddie Siegrist, who in that game, in that blowout against Seton Hall, I believe 99-65 was the final. Maddie Siegrist not only scored 50 herself, she became the leading scorer in Big East women's basketball history in that game. But the men's game later that night, that was an ugly rock fight. This is not vintage Nova. Nova's got some issues with Kyle Neptune, I think.
This was a missed opportunity.
Never easy to follow a legend.
Well, the thing is this. Oh, no doubt, but this was definitely a missed opportunity for Seton Hall's basketball team on the men's side. This was the year that Seton Hall should have beaten Nova, and for whatever reason they didn't. Granted, they came back at the end. Those last 2 minutes were enough to basically give the entire set of Nova fans complete heart attacks. But they've been doing that all season. They've been failing in the last 2 minutes the entire season. So no matter how big of a lead, I think it was like a 10, 15 point lead, and Nova won by 4.
Yeah, it was a 14-point lead at one point
with 2 minutes left.
With 3 minutes, with 3 minutes left, Nova was up by 14, and then Seton Hall went on a 15-5 run towards the end of the game. And if Seton Hall had acted like they were like they had any sense of urgency in those last few minutes, maybe it would have been even closer and possibly gotten even more interesting. But that was a 58-54 win for Villanova. Seton Hall's offense has been non-existent the past few games. Usually when Seton Hall holds opponents under 70 points, they win. They now have 2 losses. One was the hideous loss to Siena in the third place game of the Orlando tournament, and then the other one was this Villanova game, where just they have really struggled on offense. Kadari Richmond, he almost seemed like he was afraid to shoot in that game on Saturday, where he was open, and I don't understand why he doesn't have more confidence in his shot, especially from the outside. But with Seton Hall has 2 starters, Femi Odekale and Casey Nadefo, who are pretty much non-factors on the offensive side. They're very good defenders, and that's why they start and play as much as they do. But just they're black holes on offense. So when you're playing 3-on-5 on the offensive end, it's very easy for defenses to key in on the players who can shoot, like Alamir Dawes and Richmond. So and they've had injury problems as well. Dre Davis, their sixth man, has been out with a high ankle sprain for 2.5 weeks. They've really missed him in that game. So hopefully, I don't know. Nobody knows his injury status because Seton Hall doesn't update anybody on injury status. So maybe he'll be back for the Georgetown game tomorrow. Maybe back for Saturday at UConn. With Seton Hall in particular, this was also the first game that usually the Hall so far this year, they've lost to the teams above them in the standings for the most part, but they've beaten the bottom of the conference. Villanova is the first team behind them in the standings that they lost to this year in the Big East. And this isn't, I wouldn't say this completely kills their tournament hopes, but they're definitely on life support and they need to reel off some big wins. Coming up this week, they have Georgetown tomorrow, which is always a hideous rock fight. There is just nothing good out of playing Georgetown ever this year for the past few years, really, where just they're so horrible that it's the kind of game where even if you win, your net and other metrics go down unless you beat them by 20 because they're just that bad. So there's nothing good about any game against Georgetown, but at least they have that one win, so they were able to end that 2-year losing streak in Big East play. So they got that one, but Seton Hall still needs to actually win. So we'll see what happens if they lose that game. Then yes, completely done with tournament hopes. But if they win that, then they got to go up to Connecticut and playing UConn on the road. Ouch. That's not feeling good about that one, to say the least. But they need a win like that. They need to be either UConn on the road, Providence on the road at the end of the season, or Xavier at home next week. Mm-hmm. Like they need probably 2 of those
at least
to get to 12, because they need to get to 12-8, I think, in the conference to have realistic tournament hopes. Mm-hmm. And at 11-9, they probably need to do some damage in the Big East tournament at the Garden. But
absolutely,
with how this is right now, just they certainly have not played like a tournament team for the past few weeks. They're not dead yet, no. And there have been a few times this year that when we thought that the Pirates were in for a very long season, that they've come back and surprised us. So maybe it could happen again. As we saw with Shaheen and St. Peter's last year, just they don't give up. But it's hard when you don't have the horses, especially on the offensive side, and with the injury issues they've had. Kaderi Richmond looks like he's been a little banged up, but still playing through it. So it's tough, but it's not over yet.
With the fall of Nova, the Big East's probably going to have a harder time getting more bids. So it's going to be a fight for what bids they can get. Absolutely.
They have 5 solid tournament teams right now.
Yes.
They have 5 teams ranked in the top 25. Mm-hmm. From you got Marquette, Creighton, mm-hmm. UConn, Providence, and Xavier.
Yep. But the thing is,
top 5, yeah, and then
yes.
You have Seton Hall and Nova in the middle.
Mm-hmm. You do have those teams, yes, but when it comes to selection and bubble picks, usually when it comes to that, the conferences that already have a lot of bids have a greater chance of getting looked over for the lower bubble teams, that while they may mm-hmm. have a decent case, the selection committee will see is like, oh, there's already 6 from the Big East. We don't need a 7th if it's close compared to say like some random conference getting like their 3rd bid or something like that. They'll have more of a chance. Yeah, yeah.
When it comes to other
that's a good
power
chance.
conferences, I agree.
Yeah.
But they're not taking like the third place A10 team.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, no
think they're
doubt. But
I don't think that they're really, because also it's look with since the tournament expanded to 68 teams, especially the past few years, it's been a very soft bubble.
yeah,
Like if you
that's
like
true.
it, like look at look at the first four last year, where the metrics before the past two losses at least were comparable to where Seton Hall is.
I still can't stand that those play-in teams get plopped in as an 11 seed.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
no, it's like the
Yeah.
play-in teams need to be like the 15 or 16 spots. You can't just do that with the 11.
Well, that's why they do it as both. You have the last few at-large teams, that are 11 seeds,
Mhm.
and then you have the lowest of the one bid leagues, that are
Yeah.
the 16. That's why they did both. Rutgers was one of the first four teams last year because they play, Little Sisters of the Poor and they're out of conference schedule every year.
So I think that I think it's actually nice for an 11 seed because it gives you that game to get rolling, and so
Yes.
you can get that earlier upset. Now, you're not probably going to
That's
beat,
true.
but you get that. Like VCU, I think was like the first one, their first run that came out of that matchup.
Yeah,
just think
I believe UCLA a few years ago was the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does get that is true. It does give them a better chance to get something rolling by winning the play-in game. Then you're instead of facing like a 1 or a 2 seed, you're facing a 6 seed.
Right.
So it's definitely a better chance for them, no doubt.
Yeah.
But but as you mentioned before, Seton Hall definitely needs to get one or two high profile wins.
Yes.
And losing to if it was any time within like the past 15 years, a win against Nova would be considered that. This is not one of those seasons, and losing to them is going to actually hurt them.
The main saving grace is that this was a road game. So with Villanova's,
they're going to be playing them again later
Villanova's metrics, that's considered a quadrant 2 loss.
Okay.
Playing Villanova at home in 2 weeks, that's a quad 3 game. That they, because of where they are in the net rankings, where I don't remember the exact numbers, but if it's the top X number of teams at home, I want to say top 30, or you need to play at home for it to be considered quadrant 1. If it's a neutral, I think it's top 60, let's say, versus top 75 for a road in order to be considered quadrant 1. I don't recall the exact numbers, but it's I can look it up and send it in the chat later. But it's but those net quadrant wins are something that the committee looks at when it used to be RPI, but now with the new net net rankings that are a different formula, it seems to be loosely related to the Ken Palm rankings, because there's a lot of similarity between them, where that's some of the criteria as far as deciding on teams for the tournament, or very much deciding seeding within the tournament. And so again, Seton Hall's not dead yet, and they'll be playing again in 2 weeks at Prudential Center. That one I think will be a much better game, especially since it's the last home game of the season, senior night for the Pirates. If they need big wins, and they need statement wins, as you said. So let's. All right, so Obi, you have any other final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, nothing else. I think we had a great show, and yeah, Patrick Mahomes is going to be a beast for years, we hope.
Probably.
All right.
And I got one more thing before we send it off. A quick little happy trails to the man known as the Sod Father, George Toma. He was the man who basically oversaw the groundskeeping for every Super Bowl that has ever happened. This was his 57th Super Bowl. And while a shame that the turf ended up being what it was, that's having a 57 Super Bowls in a row, being the guy in charge of the groundskeeping, the groundskeeper of all groundskeepers, the Sodfather, has officially retired from the NFL. Essentially, while he retired from full-time work back in 1999, he was still brought in every year to plant the seeds, till the soil, and basically lay down the field. So, yep, happy trails to George Toma. Good on him. 57 years.
Good for him, even though a tough game to go out on with everybody talking about field conditions.
Absolutely.
Happy trails to the Sodfather. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. The Tales from the Film Set will be on Streampunk Cinema live at 8:30. They'll be talking about the commercials and I believe the halftime show. So as far as the non-football stuff, they'll have all that covered.
Smash Brothers.
Check out our website. Check out our newly refreshed website, streampunkenT.com, and follow us on all the socials as you see on the scroll below. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good night and stay awesome.